Hey, Mike, where'd you get these endless summer movie tickets from?
Whoa, I love those. That's from my Endless Summer box set.
Ooh, where'd you get that from?
The link is in the show notes, baby. Hey, everybody, welcome to the QuiverCast.
You go left, I go right. Man, this wave is out of sight. Going surfing, going surfing, going surfing with friends.
All right, everyone, welcome to the QuiverCast. It is an exciting day here. I am very excited to have Zeke Lau on the show. How are you doing, Zeke?
What's up, guys? Good. Stoked to be on here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Let's talk about today. What's going on today in your life?
Today, as in since I got up this morning.
Sure, we can go there, and then we can go back the last 6 months or so.
Well, yeah, I'm a new father, so my daughter just turned
Congrats.
1 few months ago. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's been consuming a lot of my life recently. It's been great, but definitely a transition. So as far as this morning goes, woke up, had breakfast with my daughter, kind of played around a little bit, and then did a little training session at 9, came back, picked her up. She fell asleep, so I got to run a little bit of errands and then just dropped her off with my mom. So got the afternoon off.
Awesome. So being a new dad, how does that change your life?
It changes everything about my life. Just from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, it's all revolved around her. And my attention's definitely divided in a way that it's never been before, which is awesome. I've never felt the way I feel about life, and my whole perspective on everything's definitely changed, especially when it comes to surfing. But yeah, I'm just honestly still figuring it out. I feel like every day I learn something new, either about myself or just life in general. Everything's moving at a pace that I've kind of never experienced before, for sure. So definitely just trying to make it happen. And I'm still trying to surf when I can, but mostly just putting a lot of time into my daughter and my family. And yeah, it's been great.
You said going at a pace that you never felt before. What was the pace before?
The pace was, I don't know, I feel like surfing and on tour, it's just kind of this like fast lifestyle where you're just kind of going, the next thing, next event. I'm always getting ready for something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, for fatherhood, it seems like it was hard to slow it down and operate on this level. And it's just a total change of pace, really. Like, everything I do, I got to try and bring myself back to be present and, not look too far ahead and like worrying about this or that, for me to give my daughter what she needs, I got to be present. I got to be here. And for my family and what they need, I got to be here where, I'm so used to like, I was always somewhere else for the last like 10 years. So like, when contests are going on or this and that's happening, it's hard for me, my mind not to go there. But, I got to be here right now. And that adjustment has been a little different, but I think it's for the better. It's hard to keep up with that fast lifestyle and always having something to get ready for. Eventually, like, you kind of get burnt out pretty quick doing that. So I feel like it's healthy and it's good. And, we'll just see how this goes. And, it might be for the better. I feel like as far as surfing, when I do get the chance to surf, I feel so much happier and feel so much more enjoyment out of it. It's my time to reset, and then it's a different experience for me, for sure.
So how much are you surfing? Let's say a week average.
I feel like I go on benders more so now. Like,
okay.
I kind of look at like swell and go, okay, that's what looks good. That week, I'll kind of like set everything up to be like, hey, I got babysitters, my mom's available, work it out with my wife, and okay, which windows do I have? And I'll go like every day. So we had a pipe swell last month that was firing for like 4 or 5 days straight. And I hammered it out. I went every day.
Okay.
Got every window I could. And then I pretty much haven't surfed since then. So it's been like a little over 2 weeks.
Wow. 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, are you missing surfing or are you cool without it?
Like a week and a half, like I'll be good. Like I got my fix, and especially pipes, like exhilarating. Yeah. It's a lot of adrenaline, and it's pretty intense. And I'll stay out for like 5 hours straight, so my body's pretty beat. But then usually around like the week and a half to 2 week mark, I start getting itchy. So right now it's kind of hard. Yeah, and like it's not much good waves right now, so I'm like, oh, it's not really worth my time to like, like arrange my schedule and do everything to go surf. But definitely itching. But I mean, I feel like, especially now, I'm not getting ready for contests. I feel like unless
Yeah.
it's firing, I don't really feel like it's like, I'm not missing much.
Are you chasing the tour anymore? Are you just done? What's
Um,
going on?
yeah, right now I'm definitely taking a break.
Cool. Okay, good.
For at least a year, just gonna see
Okay.
how it goes. And I just felt pretty burnt out, and
Yeah.
juggling everything with the baby and my family, and falling off the halfway cut 2 years in a row. The second year, which was last year, right before Europe, I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be there at that
Mm-hmm.
time. Just didn't want to be there. I felt like it was really difficult to get my mind there. I feel like it's easy for me to be physically ready, but mentally, it's like I wasn't ready to go perform and do that and leave my family and stuff. And so I just didn't go. And then since then, I just been working on that and trying to figure out what I want. And I don't want to be in a place where I'm like in between, I don't want to be like half there for my family, half competing and not giving my all in each place.
Mm-hmm.
I got to kind of make choices here and there. But yeah, I'm definitely taking the year off from
Cool.
competing, but I'm still surfing. So
Yeah. How far are you away from the beach?
I live 2 minutes away from the beach, so
Okay.
I'm really close.
Yeah, so you never just get out like a half an hour session, just like run out real quick, at least paddle or go swimming or anything?
Yeah, I'll do that. Like
Okay.
I'll go and we'll just like take my daughter to the beach. Like the other day,
Just hang.
I was just had a window and I was like, I'm just gonna go take her and paddle around the longboard, and we just like bellied
Cool.
a couple waves, like do stuff like that. That's like a way I get my fix in. Yeah, I'll do that. We live super close to the beach, and that's why I wanted to live here. I actually live on like the southeast side, so I don't know if you heard of Sandy Beach, but
Yeah.
I live like right up the road. Like
There's always waves at Sandy Beach too, right?
There's either wind or waves, and you get something.
That's cool. Let's go way back.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start surfing? At what age?
I started surfing on a surfboard probably around like 5 or 6.
Okay.
But my dad would take me on the boogie board. I knew how to swim when I was 3.
Okay.
So my dad would take me on the boogie board and take me out and kind of like push me on the boogie board, and I would stand up. And then eventually I started taking the bodyboard out by myself, and he would just stay on the beach, and I'd go around, catch a couple waves. And then I know for sure at like 5, he entered me in like the town and country ground contest.
Rad.
Where like my dad will paddle out with me, but I stand up on my own and stuff. So
yeah. What was your dreams back then? Was it just to surf, or did you have like aspirations to become a pro surfer? Like at what point did it all turn for you?
I think back then I just loved surfing in general, and
just a grom,
and I loved going to the beach, and whether it was surfing or bodyboarding or just like playing in the shore break, like I knew that's what I loved to do. Then my dad had me heavily involved in like other sports.
Cool.
So I did like soccer, basketball, baseball, all those things. There was always, when am I going to go to the beach? When am I going to the beach? Like, you going to take me after practice or after the game? Like, can I go? So that was always my relationship with it. And then I feel like I just got to a certain point with surfing that my dad was like, why don't we do what we do with like soccer and basketball and like all those sports, like with surfing? So then at one point I was doing all of it, probably at like 6 or 7 years old.
Wow, young.
Soccer, baseball, basketball, surfing, and doing all of it. And all I knew was that surfing was like the most natural to me. It was always something that I wanted to do rather than like my dad wanted me to do it. So I was always begging him and bugging him to go surf. And then eventually, probably around like, I feel like it's like all crunched into like that, like 4 to 7 years old mark.
Yeah.
But 7 years old, I went to my the first year I did NSSA. So
okay. That's when it got serious.
That's when it got serious. And then I qualified for nationals, and then we just went with a couple friends that we made along the way that season, which was my friend Keanu Singh, which we're still really good friends.
Yep.
We went with, my dad linked up with his dad, and they actually took us, stayed together, and we did nationals together. And pretty much they kind of gave us the lay of the land. They're like, hey, this is all the companies come down to this event. The sponsors are here, blah, blah, blah. You got to kind of talk and get support. And then my dad kind of, networked. And then I think it was like a year afterwards, I got picked up by Ezekiel,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
I forgot.
ironic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's rad.
And then they supported me for my second year, made it to nationals and did all that. And then a couple years later, my dad met David Riddle, which was my childhood coach, probably around 9 years old. And that's where things kind of took off and kind of opened this whole new realm of what surfing was to me and the surf industry. And yeah, Dave Riddle pretty much taught me everything that I know.
Did that change surfing for you in your head, like mentally?
Yeah, for sure. I think it changed surfing for me. It changed my whole thought process of what it could be, I think. And that already will change like how you do it and what you want to do. Then, you know, they're showing you guys like, oh, like there's this guy, and you know, I coached Andy and Bruce and look where they are now. Like I could help you do the same things. And then that's kind of where it kind of kickstarts like what you think is possible and what you think you want to do. And from there, I think that's where I probably had my first thought of like, oh, I could be a professional surfer. That's something that's possible.
So when you were free surfing at a young age, let's say 10, 11, 12, whatever, were you surfing heats in your head or were you surfing free?
No.
Like, no. Okay.
No,
You were just, you still love surfing.
I just surfed, and then like them saying like Annie and Bruce, and like I had my favorite surfer, Sonny Garcia. Yeah. I would just watch videos, and my whole thing with like free surfing was like, oh, I'm gonna try and surf like them and like do those turns or do airs like them,
right?
Charge big waves. And then that's kind of like I felt like where it became real fun for me, and then like I loved free surfing and like all that stuff, and then kind of create your own style and like how you want to approach looking at waves and do certain things that you like. Like if I saw Sonny do a big hack, I was like, oh, I want to do turns like that. That's what it was. And then eventually I would just contests were almost like my showcase of like, okay, I'm just gonna free surf in a jersey.
Yeah, I like that.
That's what it turned into. And my coach Dave Riddle was always kind of an advocate for that. Like just go out there and surf and rip and it'll all come together. So
did you ever have like mock heats with your friends like while you're free surfing?
At that age, not really. I think the closest thing I had was like a few times like John would come and surf like my home break Kiwalos, and he would show up and we'd always like compete with each other, like, oh, let's have like an air show. For some reason, like remember back in the day, like the Grom contest always had like an air show where all the pros would come and do airs. Like that's all they did. Which was super sick. And I remember me and John used to always kind of do that. Like, oh, we'll have an air show, and then we'd try and launch airs, and literally I'd spend like an hour taking off on closeouts trying to do an air that I didn't know how to do.
That's how you learn, right?
Yeah, and then I'd come in, my dad's like, what the heck are you doing up there?
Does your dad surf?
My dad was surfing, yeah. So my dad got into surfing actually in college.
Oh, okay.
So like right around the same time they had me. And then that's why he was going to the beach, and it kind of transitioned. Okay. Like that. So while I was growing up surfing, he was also surfing.
Okay, cool. His background's in sports too, right?
Yeah, his background's in sports, more so football. And he's a football coach here in Oahu. So he coaches high school football.
Does that relate to surfing at all? Him being a mentor to other kids, but in a team sport versus individual sport?
No, I don't think it relates at all to surfing. Okay. I think it takes a total opposite personality to go play football than it does to go surfing. And like, especially competing surfing is so different to competing on a football field and a team aspect. And like, you know, individual sports, I feel like take a whole different mindset.
100%. Yeah, I agree with you. Going back to the early days, the John and you doing airs on closeouts. Were you guys friends or were you guys just friendly? Like, what was your relationship?
No, yeah, we're fully friends. I feel like Groms that you see each other at the comps, and like I knew who John was. I was like, oh my god, he's been John since he was you know 7 years old. You know, he's the kid that surfs pipe, and he's got into the XL Pro at Sunset when it was like 10 feet when he was like 8 years old. Like
crazy.
It was all of that already. So I kind of knew him, and he was always super nice. And his mom and my dad kind of like linked up, and then we try and like orchestrate surfing and stuff. So growing up, we surfed a fair bit together, and you know, it was always like super friendly and
cool. So as you're getting older, you keep going to California and doing nationals. What did you think of California versus Hawaii?
California versus Hawaii, I just felt it was super hard to like transition. Everything was just different. You're wearing a wetsuit now. Yeah, the water's freezing. The crowds seem different. I know the crowds are a little bit more for some reason for me at a young age were more intimidating. I
Mm.
felt like they had like a different dynamic in the lineup. And then
Okay.
there's like, seemed like there's more kids in the lineup in California. Where
Really?
like
Yeah, true.
in Hawaii, I mean, back when
Yeah.
I was surfing, a lot of lineups were like, there were specific lineups that kids knew, like, hey, that's for kids. Like
Okay.
VLAN, the kids.
Okay.
Certain other places, like, those are kid spots. A lot of the better waves, like, back when I was doing it, kids were getting sent in.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, like, it was a little more scary. Like, you didn't really surf different breaks, or you just sit on the inside, where I felt like in Cali, we show up to lowers, and, like, brother, Andrew Doheny, everyone's, like, sitting out at the peak with, like, the old guys.
Yeah.
And the old guys are kind of, like, cheering them on and, like, getting them into it. Where, like, I was coming from Hawaii, where it was just, like, you get so ground out, and they're like, yeah, ground, beat it. You're on the inside. You're not here yet. You don't get to sit out of the peak with us.
Okay.
So it's a little different hierarchy.
Yeah.
But I think obviously that's definitely changed over time.
What about power? Power wise, it was way more powerful at home, right?
Power wise, it was way different. I remember struggling in California, just like there's not as much push on the wave. I felt like I had to work harder, and especially beach breaks. At least here on Oahu, like we don't have that much beach breaks. We have like Eukai Sandbar, which is like that doesn't even count. Like you show up to Huntington Beach, and I'm just absolutely mind blown. I don't know where to start, what to do. Like it took me years and years to like figure out that place. Yeah, I felt like beach breaks were a bigger thing, and like even like T Street and like all those ways. I thought it was super fun, but definitely took some like adjusting.
Was it frustrating or fun?
Huntington was frustrating, but I love like T Street and like
there's a reef.
Ribbies. Like there's like they're real close to the beach, where I felt like that was super sick. Where Hawaii is like always like you got to paddle out to the reef and like, in a channel. Like I always thought it was super fun to surf real close to the beach and do your last turn basically on the shore. Now
you're kind of going up the ranks in amateur. How are you feeling about your other competitors around the nation? East Coast, West Coast guys?
Definitely just way more competitive for sure. And I felt like my dad's background with football and like us doing other sports kind of started influencing how we did things and our approach and, you know, his view on how it should be done and stuff. So I think once I got past the mini grom stage, the competitive level like was turning up a notch and definitely got way more serious. Surfing wasn't as much of like a fun thing that I did anymore, even though I always had fun doing it.
Yeah.
I know as long as like my dad was taking the time out of his day to like take me surf, we were practicing for contests. Okay. And that's kind of how things happened and things shifted a little bit. And then there were times where I'd like, oh, my friends would hit me up and I could go surf. And then those were my little moments of like, oh, I felt like I was on a little surf trip. I go surf and just not worry about anything.
Did you look forward to those times?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
I loved those times.
What about the first time going paddling out at like North Shore? Were you pretty young when you did it the first time?
Yeah, for sure. I think my first time I started paddling out to legit spots on the North Shore was with Dave Riddle.
Oh, okay.
He took me out to like big like Lonnie's, and his spot was backyard, so we'd surf backyards a lot and Sunset and stuff. And he kind of taught me like the big three: you surf Haleiwa, Sunset, and Pipe, and that's what we're getting ready for. So you got to learn. We'll get comfortable out there. But I remember my first time I paddled out to Lonnie's with my coach. It was huge, and I was on like a little 4.9 surfboard. I didn't even catch a wave before I got caught inside and broke my board. No. And I was instantly freaked out. I was like, oh my God. Remember it was raining and dark and just like, it was so gnarly to me. He kind of stayed by me. He's like, it's all right, but we're going to swim in now. So he made me swim in. I would have been like 10 or 11-ish.
Wow. Yeah.
But he stayed with me and he just helped me swim in. And he taught me like how to go in and like slowly. That was our whole session, was him doing that.
Okay.
And I got in, I was rattled. My dad was on the beach, and I think my dad was like stoked to have someone do that because I don't think he was at the level to like do it for me.
Yeah.
So like I went through it, we got through it, and then from there we kind of progressed and things got better. And that was my ice-breaking moment for the North Shore.
What's your dad's name?
My dad's name is Leonard Lau.
Okay, Leonard. Was he nervous for you at that point, you think? Watching you, his son?
Yeah, for sure. I think he was for sure nervous, you know. But he also knew like he wanted to push me and like get my level up. And he sees more of like what I'm competing up against, and then he'll tell me. Or else in my head, I'm not competing with anyone. Yeah. He's kind of like setting those standards for me. So he kind of knows this is what I have to do to get better and blah, blah, blah. So he always would talk to Rid, and they would kind of just pick weekends where I'd go out so I could get comfortable out there. But yeah, he was definitely nervous, but at the same time, he was pushing me. So
What about your first wave at Pipe? Your first real good wave? Do you remember that day?
yeah. I mean, I had surfed a few times at Pipe when it was small, so it's like little backdoor. It's kind of like a little fun wave. It's not much different than the sandbar those days.
Okay.
But I remember my first real day at Pipe. I would have been like 12.
Wow.
And my coach helped me get like a brand new like step up like JS surfboard. I was so psyched.
Yeah.
Got it all ready. I was like, okay, this is the day. And ironically enough, my mom was driving me out there. And she's driving out and it's bombing. We're passing like Lonnie's and my man. She's like, what the heck? You're not going out here.
Right. Yeah.
And I had to just tell her, like, no, Rid's going to tell me if I can go out. Like, it's fine. Like, he got me. Like, we might just watch.
Mm-hmm.
But in my head, I knew, like, I'm going out. Like,
Okay.
this is the day.
Okay.
So I kind of had to just put mom on the back burner, and she dropped me off. And then Rid talked her down, like, yeah, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. She was freaking out. So she dropped me off, drove back to town, and like, Dave took me to the Volcom house. He actually didn't push it on me.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like, we're just going to go watch the waves. We'll see how it is. And then, we'll see if we go surf somewhere else or something. And I got there, and I remember it was my first like real Pipe day at the house. I remember walking in, and the energy was different. Had all the boys in the yard, and Kyborg was there, and he was like, "What, are you ready?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then the energy I felt, I was like, "I'm going. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just not gonna look at it." Started waxing up my brand new board, put my leash on, started waxing up, and then Rid kind of just let me do my own thing, and I kind of went up to him. I was like, okay, I'm out there. He's like, you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm good.
Wow.
Walked out there, and I just looked, and I was like, oh, God, here we go. And I basically waited for someone I kind of knew. I think it was, might have been Marcus Hickman at the time.
Okay.
He was paddling out, so I just kind of waited, and I just trailed him, kind of took his line. But then I ended up getting blown pretty far down the beach. But I just took my time, got out there, paddled way out in the channel. I just kind of sat there and watched a few sets. And I was like, holy crap, it's large. But I always told myself at those moments, like, I don't need to catch. I'm not here to catch the biggest wave. I'm here to get comfortable. Even if I have to paddle in, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like be out there in the lineup and like show my face and just like be in the moment to like let something happen. I don't know what's going to happen, whether I learn or a wave comes, even if I catch like a little sandbar one, catch one and go in. So I ended up just staying out there and dodging sets for like 2 hours.
Okay.
Didn't catch a wave. And then eventually on accident, I kind of floated right into the middle like of the lineup. And one of my friends, he was older, Tori Meiser at the time, was kind of there. And I was like, oh, I'm going to stay by you. Like, he's like, yeah, he kind of took care of me. And then this wave came, and it was a solid, probably like 8-footer on like a 10-foot day. I just remember he yelled, go Zeke. And then everyone in the lineup started yelling for me to go. And I was like, oh no, here we go. Now I have to go. And then I was just like, this is it. I'm just put my head down. Don't even look. Paddle my hardest. I'm just going on this wave. And then somehow I got the chip shot. It let me in, and I bottom turned. I remember just like the wave being so big, I couldn't even see like the top of it or anything.
Wow.
And then I could see it like it was going to close out. So I like took a high line and then just went straight. And it was like a big explosion. But after that, I went in. I was like, oh, that's sick. I caught one, and I went in. I remember coming in, and Red was stoked. And he was like, yeah, you got one. That was sick. And he figured it out. And all the boys are high-fiving me. It was like a proud moment for me. And
yeah, 100%.
The approval of like the boys, and kind of was one of those moments. And ended up getting a shot, which was like super sick. And that was like my first Pipe day.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Did that pump you up to keep surfing Pipe?
For sure. So that was it. After that, I was like, I'm doing it every time. I'm hooked, and now I want to get barreled. Like I caught a wave. The next step is like I'm gonna get barreled, and then kind of went up from there. And I actually got a couple of days that were a little like bigger, but a little smaller than that, where I was like actually able to figure out the lineup and stuff. And I just found people to go out with that knew how to do it. Dusty Payne was one of those guys.
Oh yeah.
I kind of was under his wing, and I'd always just follow him, and kind of taught me a lot. And that was pretty much it. And then you just take a couple poundings, and then you learn and just get better.
How was the lineup out there? You're seeing that some of the best surfers in the world. You're the local kid.
Yeah.
That obviously helped, I'm sure.
For sure. That helped a lot. And they were obviously really supportive, and
Yeah.
they wanted me out there, which I could feel, which is cool. I couldn't imagine if they didn't want me out there and the waves were scary. Like, I probably would have just never even got close to a wave, you know?
Yeah.
So having that support from those guys definitely pushed me into it and made it easier for me to like get waves and like have a chance, you know? And from there, I kind of just like inched my way in a little bit more and like tried to get myself in a position. My whole goal was always like put myself somewhere where one of the boys would tell me to go. So then that was always kind of like my little game plan. And then every time I went out, I just got a little more comfortable with seeing the waves, how they're coming in, my timing, dodging sets, putting myself in the right place. But obviously, I don't think I got like a proper good barrel until I was like 15.
Okay. Now, how many other Groms your age were out there? Was there many? John probably.
John was out there most of the days that I was out there.
Yeah.
And it was always cool. I'd kind of like, if I seen him, I'd go up to him and be like, oh, okay, like sick. We're like the Groms, kind of piggyback off him. But he was another level. He was already like, he was already John.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
So like, seeing that definitely wanted me to like push me to want that, you know, like seeing him do it definitely was like, that's possible.
Okay.
Like, guys are doing this at my age or close to my age. Like, I got to try and figure this out. But there was probably only like a handful.
Okay.
Probably would have been like John and Nate, and then Cole Rothman some days, and like Eli. Like their whole crew was probably like the only crew of kids that were really out there at the time that we were young. Yeah, that was pretty much it, I think.
Some of the older guys, were all of them pro Grom, or were there a few older guys like, you guys shouldn't be out here?
At Pipe,
a
lot of them kind of were. Especially if like for the kids that we were from there. So I think they're really supportive of that.
Okay.
And it was always something like, you guys got to figure it out. I mean, you guys are like the next generation. And you guys got to be able to do this. So it was almost like they were pushing us and like almost testing you, like, will you go? Kind of like it was so gnarly that they were actually like, yeah, let's see if you got it. Okay. Or like other ways were like, nah, Grom, you got to sit on the side.
So now you're 15, 16, 17, you kind of know Pipe. Mm-hmm. And now all the pros are showing up for the contest.
Yeah.
Are you keeping your spot at Pipe? Or do you have a spot? I guess I should ask, do you have a spot at that point at Pipe?
I had a little spot. It wasn't very high. Yeah. But I definitely kept track of who my spot was over, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, because at that time, like, I mean,
the island's getting pounded with all these pro surfers and that.
Yeah, everyone's coming over and stuff, and I kind of know like if certain guys tell me to go, I can just go. Yep. Or like, obviously, if guys are older and they're like pro surfers and stuff, like I'm not trying to battle them at all. Like I'm almost like psyched to see them too. Like back then, it would have been like I don't even know. Probably would have been like Jordy Smith, Julian Wilson, like that.
Yeah.
Like Dusty's age guys were kind of like those new guys coming in. Mm-hmm. And like a generation above them probably would have been like the Godowskises and and like those guys. And I'm forgetting who like the Aussie guys were, but like it would have been like Mick Fanning. Them were out there. Like Mick Fanning was one of my other Joel Parkinson. Like they were my other favorite surfers. So if I just seen them, I'd just be starstruck. You know?
Okay, gotcha.
But like I didn't feel like, oh, I'm gonna try and
compete against these guys.
As far as like kids my age, like that's who I'd be competing against, you know?
Yeah. When was your first time really competing in the pro divisions after you do amateurs? And you did pretty good at amateurs, right? You did pretty good at national?
I did pretty good in amateurs. I won Open Juniors when I was 15. And then I won Open Men's last year in NSSA.
Yeah.
A couple other national titles. My first pro event, I think it would have been the HIC, or if it was the XL Pro at Sunset.
Yeah.
It probably would have been when I was around 14 or 15. Like same time around that I was starting to surf Pipe. Like all that stuff was kind of happening simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was like my first one, like doing the XL. Then I did like, they used to have like a 1-star at Bowls. So I did that. But it was around that 15, between 14 and 16.
Yep.
I want to say I was 15 when I first did my first pro event.
At that point, just getting your feet wet, kind of just diving in.
Getting my feet wet. I was still in school. So like,
it
was hard for me to miss school. But the one I would skip for was like XL Pro or the HIC at Sunset. And then they ran the 1 star in the summertime. So I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll do NSSAs and stuff. And then when I was about, I think I was 16 or 17, I did, the year I was 16, I was turning 17. I went to El Salvador and Puerto Escondido in the summer. And that was like my first, like travel, and did a QS, like international.
What'd you think of Porto?
Porto was gnarly, but then at the same time, I was like, oh, it's kind of like a little friendlier version than Pipe.
Really?
No,
Okay.
that it's just sand under there.
Yes.
But at that point, I'd been surfing Pipe for a while, so I was like a little more comfortable. Like 15, I was getting like proper backdoor ones, and like I had a couple of big wipeouts and slam the bottom. So at that point, I was pretty comfortable. At like 15, 16, like that. From that like 12 to like 15 range, like I hit it hard and got comfortable pretty quick, I think. So like, yeah, by the time I went to Porto, I was like kind of psyched. Like I thought the wave was super sick. So it was my first time ever. I did the event. I brought the kitchen sink with me. I brought from a 6'5" to like a 7'0". So I had 2 board bags, and back then I had glass on fins. I don't even know how I got the boards over there.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That's awesome. What'd you think of Mexico, going to that country?
It was so gnarly. That made me I wanted to like stay in school and never travel again.
Okay, were you scared?
Was hectic. I was a little scared, and just I didn't get sick, but a lot of people around us that travel with us were going down, and I was like so scared of the water and the food. I just like, it was a culture shock to me, you know. And it was like my first real time. I traveled and did other stuff, but not like El Salvador and Mexico were shocking to me. Like first time, like real third world country.
So you're really being careful what you ate and everything, what you drank?
Yeah, I was brushing my teeth with bottled water. Like everything that went into my body was from a bottle or like heavily cooked. I didn't even eat veggies. I was too scared.
Oh my God.
It was like, I didn't want to get sick. Yeah, I remember that was like the summer before my senior year in high school. And that was the first time I was like, I'm so psyched that I have one more year in school, and then I'll probably end up being on the road doing this a lot more.
Yeah.
But I remember like that first time doing those QSs, I was shocked. I was like, the traveling thing's a big one for me. And like coming from Hawaii, like it's real small. So like I got real used to my routine and like the things I did, went to the same places every day. And like that seemed like a lot of work.
So you're in school, you graduate from school, you're turning pro, right? Yeah,
pretty much. Well, in that transition period, the first time I did those QSs were kind of like this, see what I'm going to do period. Cause like, I kind of didn't have any traction as far as like doing good in those pro events previously until that summer I went to El Salvador and I ended up winning the QS there.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
It was a 4-star.
Oh, wow. It's big.
And then I ended up getting second at Porto.
Okay.
So like that was like a big transition. Like, okay, I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Take this last year of school. And then after that, I know I'm going to do the full-time QS and kind of show my parents like I kind of had what it took and whatever.
What was plan B? I know you didn't do plan B, but what was your plan B?
Plan B was
go to school?
Yeah, I'll probably try and get into college and go to school and maybe find a job. But in my head, that was like my parents had that plan B.
Okay, gotcha.
I would have had to do that, like to kind of like, you know what I mean? And but in my head, I was like, I gotta figure this out. You know, like, I want to be able to do this, and that's the route I want to take. And it's kind of all I've ever dreamt of doing. So, and at that point, I'd been training real hard, and I started training before school 3 times a week. I'd wake up at 5 and I'd train before school and then go to school and then either surf or I'd train after again. So like training was like a big part of my thing, and I was training for surfing. So
you're training, you're surfing, you're going to school. Was there any point at that point where you're just kind of fried?
I was super pumped, inspired. At one point, I was getting frustrated with not getting the results, which ironically came at that same point right before those QSs. Like I went to nationals that year and I didn't make a single final, which I felt like definitely should have happened. You know, I should have been in the open men's final. I went to US champs. I lost in the quarters. Like, you know, I didn't do good in any of the amateur events, which at that point I was like super down about. I knew right after that we were going to go do these QSs. kind of stoked for that. And my coach at the time was Jason Shibata, and he's like, hey, don't worry about this. We're just gonna go there, surf, and let's have fun. We're gonna go to new places and you're gonna surf some sick waves. So let's like focus on that. And
Okay.
that transition kind of helped my mindset and maybe freed me up to like do good in those events.
Besides surfing heats, are you filming? Are you taking photos? What is there anything else going on?
Yeah. We're doing photo shoots here and there. I know
Okay.
when the waves were good at home, like we do some photo shoots, and my coach at the time, Jason Shibata, he filmed me a lot. So
Okay.
he gave me a bunch of clips and I was able to watch, and I was kind of into that. I felt like watching yourself surf was like the best way to get better and kind of improve, especially for competition. You got to see what it looks like versus how it feels. So that definitely helped.
Was surfing for a photographer or for the camera, knowing the camera's on, did you surf differently than you would if you were just going out for a free surf?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Okay.
I try and just like do stuff for the camera. Like obviously I try to do like big airs, or I just go bigger. That was basically it.
Okay.
Like usually when I was like free surfing, I would kind of just like not risk as much, just put a little bit more flow, and kind of at that age, like 15, I was kind of more focused on like piecing a wave together. But then if I was trying to get shots or something, I was basically like, okay, it's time to go to the air or get a big barrel or something.
So you graduate, and now you do well in El Salvador. Now you're going to turn pro. How does that go?
Yeah, and then I went back to school, and I was psyched. I felt like, okay, that kind of was my pro debut.
Yep.
And then I was going to do HIC, was at Sunset, and I was super psyched for that. I trained harder for that, and I felt like I was in real good shape. Jeff Bushman was making me some really good boards at the time, and then ended up winning HIC. I think I was 17 at the time.
That's right.
Got into Triple Crown.
Yes.
So then I was like in school doing the Triple Crown. I thought that was like the sickest thing ever.
Yes.
Because I was like, oh, like just a young kid. I'm able to get into these pro events with like all like, I remember Jordy was in one of my heats, and it was just like, I was like surfing a heat, lost to Jordy, and I was like, didn't even care that I lost, but I was like going back to school. It was like, it's still a sick day for me. I was still so like, green and fresh to it. I was just stoked on it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was really excited to like start my first year on the QS the following year. Graduate high school, jump on the QS. I think the first few events, that was when they had, I think there was like 10,000s, or they called them primes at the time, which would be like the Challenger Series is now.
Yep.
And because I got into Triple Crown and did all that, I like qualified for that like straight out of high school. So it was like perfect timing for everything.
Yeah.
And I went and did those events and just got absolutely smoked. And realized like there's levels to this, and like I have a lot to figure out. And I was learning how to travel. The traveling thing was a real issue for me, I think, and being away from home. And of course, right before I got on the road for a whole year, I was like, got real comfortable at home, and my friends and like all that stuff really was playing like a toll on me traveling, and would get homesick really easily. The traveling thing was really difficult for me, and I think it kind of played into like how I competed and stuff, where maybe I wasn't fully present in those times.
So you said you got smoked in the beginning. How did you get smoked? Were you out surfed, or were you like strategy wasn't there?
Both. It was happening both, so I was even more so confused. Like, oh, it's my surfing, and I'm getting out strategized. Like, guys were sitting on me for 25 minutes of the heat. I didn't even know what was going on yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they were just playing the game, and I was frustrated, obviously, and like I did so good in those few events that I did do before, so I was expecting like results pretty fast, and obviously that didn't happen. So when it wasn't happening, it was like frustrating for sure. And then I'm losing, and I'm far away from home, and I'm like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm over this place. Like all those things start taking a toll, and then I pretty much went a year with losing in the same round, which was like the second round or the first round.
Okay. So how does the following year go on the QS? Starting to do better though, right?
I was starting to do better. I think. Oh no, actually, the end of that year, I put a lot like of my frustration and my like stuff like after I would do that. Like a lot of the things were like, I'm wasting my time here. I'm gonna go home now, train really hard, get back on a real good program, surf a bunch, and then get ready for the next event, and then go and try and do it again.
Yeah.
Kept doing it through the year, and saw little success. And then I got to the 2 Hawaii events, which was Haleiwa and Sunset, and I was like, okay, this is my chance. I know the wave. I got a little bit of strategy now. I kind of figured that out. I should start making some heats. And I remember Haleiwa was the first event, and the first round was like fire, and the waves were really good, and I surfed well. I was like, okay, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. And then the next round, it was like those little lefts.
Yeah.
And I lost that heat. It was close, and I lost, but I just felt so frustrated. I was like, oh, like this is always happening. It always like changes to where like I'm just not there yet. And then Sunset was the next event, and I just told myself I want to end the year on a good note, like just feeling good after the event, and I want to just like put on a good performance. So I kind of changed my approach leading up to that event. I just surfed a bunch and was having a lot of fun. At the same time, Jeff Bushman made me like this magic bunch of boards. So like that in turn already makes me feel more psyched, and having surf sessions, I'm feeling really good. I think it just put me in a really good mindset. And then that actually ended up being the year I won the World Cup for the first time.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, I cracked the code.
Yeah.
But I'm tired, and I had a long year, and I took like 2 months off. I was 20 years old. I just turned 20 right after that event. Took months off. The next year was starting up, and I kind of took my foot off the gas. Went to Australia that year, overweight, out of shape. Didn't work on my board. That year actually ended up going worse than the year before.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I had a really long, hard year that year. And then that was tough. I didn't make a heat all year. Like from start to finish, I made like maybe 1 or 2 heats, and that was it. And yeah, so that was my second year.
During these tough period of turning pro, who are you hanging out with? Do you have a group of guys, or are you by yourself?
At that time, I think was an issue. I was hanging out with my boys from home and from
Okay.
school. You know what I mean? Like that's all I cared about
Yeah.
at that age. And it was just like this weird transition. And then like me going to high school, I strayed away from like the surf crowd. I kind of like John them. Like it was before high school, I'd hang out and go surf with John them a lot, and like that crowd of guys, and like my friend Keanu. And then they kind of continued on and started doing more pro events and traveling more, and did World Juniors and like all that stuff. And I stayed in school. And then I developed my relationships within school and home. Like I said, I got real comfortable with that because that was just my life at the time. And then it was just like I was just digging my roots deeper. And then when it was time to like go and travel and like do the QS and be gone away, felt like it was way harder. And then I was like missing my friends and like that whole dynamic. And you're 18, 20-year-old kid. It's like, at that point, it's all that matters almost.
Yeah, no, 100% does.
You're not really thinking about like, oh, my success and where my future is going to be. And like you are, and you have those things, but it's like almost secondary.
Yeah.
That's where I was in my life. And I felt that those first 2 years for sure.
When did everything turn around?
And then I think after that second year was really rough. And then I had a renegotiation with Volcom. That actually went pretty sour. Didn't end very good. And I split from them. And then I was sponsorless and looking for sponsors for about 6 months. And then also on the QS and still trying to do it. And that was the turning point, I think. And I was like, I got to get serious. I got to change my program, change what I'm doing. I ended up changing the boards I was riding, went from Jeff Bushman to getting on Channel Islands, and kind of curated everything to the QS and like zoning in on that. I made some heats in the beginning. I think it was just the pure transition of boards helped me out a little bit in Australia and like those smaller events. Halfway through that year, I got linked up with Quicksilver. It wasn't a very big deal. It was like pretty minimal. They gave me like travel budget and enough to like get everywhere. But the main thing they gave me was, we'll cover your coaching, which was Jake Patterson at the time.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And that was like this click, you know? Okay. And then I linked up with them. He was traveling with Kanoa Urashi at the time, Leo Fioravanti, I think Mark Lockamore. And then I jumped in that crew.
Okay.
And that kind of really changed, like I said, who I was around, things I was looking at, and like how they kind of viewed the game, which was totally different from what I was exposed to at the time. And Jake kind of restructured my whole approach as far as competition and surfing and stuff.
So let's break that down a little bit. First off, you're with Kanoa, who's been in the magazine forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got some pretty big names there.
Yeah.
And now you're put in this group of guys. Is there a personality clash? You guys hit it off as best friends? Like, how did that go?
No, it was pretty cool. I don't know. Cool. They're younger than me, so I kind of was just like, you know,
you're the big brother.
Yeah, I was just like this new kid. So I was just like, I was pretty like stoked to be doing it. So I was like, I had a pretty humble approach and I was stoked to be there. And like at the time, like they were doing better than me on the QS. So I was like, I got some stuff to learn. And Jake was sitting me down and just really teaching me. And he had been working with them for a little bit. So he was pointing stuff out. So I kind of, in a way, at the beginning was kind of looking at them for like guidance a little bit. And they were kind of teaching me because at that point, they were like bred to do this. Like
Yeah.
I went to high school and they did this their whole life, basically, you know? So I'm way behind them as far as like what I know and my approach and stuff. So I'm kind of just, you know, I have confidence in myself to where like I felt like I could surf better than them, but at the same time, like they're competitive savvy and like their program was like a little more clicked in. So I was taking a lot and I was trying to soak up as much as I could and just learn. So that was kind of my approach. That was like for that half year, and I actually started doing better. And I like was learning a lot as far as straight up heat strategy. For me, when I was winning contests and did good when I was younger, there was no priority.
Yeah.
There's no 4-man prial. Like you did priority when you had a man-on-man heat. But then now they threw this 4-man prial, and it blew my mind. I could not wrap my round around it. Like I was just like, what is happening? All of a sudden, I can't take off on a wave. Like guys are just taxing me, and I'm like getting 2-point rides. Jake basically just like taught me the whole thing, and we ran drills and we did a bunch of stuff. That's when I first started running like real mock heats. And at that point, I'm like 21, 22 years old.
And how was Jake as a coach?
Jake was pretty epic as a coach. Like,
yeah, I bet.
To me, he had so much information that I was just like, what? Like these are things that other guys know. Like I'm not even competing. It's not even fair at this point.
Yeah.
Like the amount of stuff they knew and then what I knew, like I'm relying heavily on talent and then getting lucky if I get it, basically. So like him teaching me all those things, I was like, okay, now I have a structure. Now I have something where I can work on. Now I'm like figuring out a way to use all my background with like soccer, basketball, all those other sports, like how I go practice. I'm using all this information. Like now when I go surf, like I'm going to practice those things.
Rad.
So
that's cool.
He unlocked a whole new level for me, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. How about his intensity? Is he an intense guy?
Yeah, he's intense. I feel like my dad was very intense.
Okay.
So like I feel like intense was like he wasn't as intense as my dad, but he had a lot like high energy, like you know, like high pace. We did a lot, like you know, moving a lot. A lot of information was just being thrown out, and he was just really psyched about it. Like I could tell he loved coaching probably just as much as he loved like actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That was crazy to me, and he was filming everything, and it was a lot. And he inspired me a lot in that way.
You're getting better. You're understanding.
I'm getting better. So I did a half year with him. I did better towards the end of the year. I got a couple little results, which kept me in that same place where I needed to be, which was to be able to do those 10,000s or those prime events.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year, I had the full year with him. That year went really well.
Okay.
And I realized I was really thinking I was going to win an event. And I actually ended up not winning, but I had a lot more consistent results where it was like some quarters, some finals, some ninth. I only had like 2 events or 2 maybe events that I got below ninth.
Okay.
So it was like really good. And then that was the first year I was like crunching numbers. Like all those other years on the QS, I didn't even look at any numbers. I just listened. Oh, someone said I was pretty close to qualifying, but I didn't know what that meant as far as like rankings and stuff. So they taught me the ranking system and like how to crunch numbers. And like, I realized, wow, guys know when they're paddling out for heats, like what place they need to get. And like, as far as points, like I basically learned the whole game that year. Wow. And then I think that was 2016 16. And that was the year I qualified.
So then you finally qualify to the CT. How are things different there going into that?
Now
you're with the elite guys of the world.
A lot changed in a lot of different ways for me, whether it was like how I thought about this whole thing or how my approach, where I was like, oh, I made it now. I made it to this level that I've been kicking and scratching to figure out how to do. And like thinking I'm the guy now, like all these things, and your ego gets built up and, you know, you're about to like make your debut on this world tour stage. And like, you're thinking everyone's watching you, like all these things are going through your head, and a lot of those things filled up my head more than what I felt like should have been like what I need to do to perform, and really zoning in on like equipment and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of times it made me get caught up in the moment a lot, whether it was for good or for bad. Sometimes I got caught up in the moment and I rose, but a lot of times like I got caught up in those moments and just crumbled. It was just like so much, or too heavy, or I was not focused, or things like that. A lot of stuff like that were happening. But at the same time, I was learning about the game, and I was learning certain things that I needed to do. And Jake was working with me a lot on my equipment and how to surf to get scores. And I did pretty good in Australia that year.
Yeah.
Got third at Bell's.
Wow. Yeah.
Which put me at that point was like 11th in the world. I think that was like the highest I ever been on tour. At that point, I was like, okay, I felt like I made it again, like that same thing. And then I don't know what happened. Like the way I was looking at it, or my perspective on it was just, I feel like not correct of what I needed to do to keep progressing. And it kind of just capped me out. And I just kind of had a struggle fest of a year trying to learn and go to these different spots. And I was psyched to go to places like Fiji and Tahiti, and like thinking it's going to be a certain way, and just like absolutely crumbling, like just not surfing the way I wanted to surf. Felt like there's a lot more happening that I was trying to figure out that didn't have to do with like the surfing part.
Yeah. I get that.
I think that part was really overwhelming. Basically, back then, it was like, hey, you figure out halfway through the year, I got to start doing some QSs because I got to start backing it up.
Yes.
It's going to just get harder as the title race goes down the line, and the rankings, the
this
way
is
they
before
were,
the
like,
cut too.
Before the cut, like the worse you do, the harder your seed gets, because it starts playing into your seed. So if you start going lower in those earlier rounds, you're drawing those guys that have higher seeds that are probably going to be in contention for a title. So like if you're going against those guys, you're up against a lot.
Yeah.
So then I just started backing myself up with QSs, and that year I ended up pulling it off, but it was super sketchy. Like I won Portugal at the end of that year, which was like my only good result I got on the QS, and then ended up backing it up with doing HIC, which was a 3,000. And then I won that. Just those two events were enough to like make me requalify by the last spot.
Okay. The following years is kind of the same situation, right? Is that 2018, I think, maybe?
2018, but that was like my best year on tour. As far as like consistency wise, I got more results, and then I ended up at the end of the year I double qualified. So I qualified on tour, and then I ended up qualifying off on the QS.
Yeah.
That was my best, most consistent year, where I got 5th at Bell's, I got 3rd in Brazil.
Wow. Yeah.
Got a couple 9s that kept me there. But still a lot of the same spots I just like couldn't figure out, you know.
What about traveling? Like that's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of airplanes.
Yeah, and like it was a lot of traveling, but at that time, one of the things that I learned a lot from Jake and traveling with Kanoa and Leo was like how to travel.
Oh, okay.
And they enjoyed traveling, and like they had certain things that they did to make traveling fun, and like they would stop and do things in those places. The whole globe was like their playground.
Cool.
And they would be like, "Oh, I'm in." I never even thought of things like this. They're like, "Oh, I'm in Australia. Like, oh, I think there's a swell in Fiji. I'm just gonna go stop over there and get a couple, and then go home." Like doing things like that opened my mind to be like, "Whoa, guys do that?" Like, I thought I'd go there, do my event, and I go back home.
So you were getting outside the tent. You were leaving the contest area and doing other things. Exactly,
and I'd go do little trips here and there, and like go on some surf trips, which made traveling fun. And like my whole thing with being on tour, like it kind of, there's a little bit more enjoyment there with surfing wise. I think that helped. And I learned how to travel, and that was a big thing. Like each year on tour, I kind of learned how to travel a little bit more.
Did you see anything rad, like non-surfing, like inland somewhere? Or did you go anywhere that's like, you're so stoked you went there?
Yeah, we did a few things like that. The one thing I love doing the most, and I would try and do it every year, was like when we go to South Africa, we do like the safaris and stuff.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Like that blew my mind. I was like, what the heck? This is the best thing I've ever done in my life. I never thought I would be this stoked on it. But that was super cool. And we'd go see like castles in like Portugal, and then just see different waves in different areas, drive from Portugal to France, try and score waves like in between, and go to Spain, and like things like that, you know, just being open to like experiencing more and using my career at the time, which is
Mhm.
surfing and traveling, as like a way to like see the world, and
Yeah.
all those things were like, I didn't see it that way, which
Mhm.
was like really eye opening for me.
Another thing is you're at the scene of the contest.
Mhm.
Everyone recognizes you, right? Now you go to see the Eiffel Tower or wherever you go. Are you recognized outside of the surfing realm?
Yeah, no one knows
So
you.
you're just a
No one
tourist.
cares. Yeah, you're just a tourist, and
Is that good or bad?
that always felt good to me. Like
Okay.
I always like. I mean, it's, don't get me wrong, it's super sick. And you go to the events and guys know your name and you're getting signing autographs and like those stuff. For me, for a kid in Hawaii, that's epic. I would never imagine me cruising with Kelly and all those guys, and the same guys that asked for their autograph, they asked for me. Like,
Yeah.
I would never think of that,
Yep.
But at the same time, it's just refreshing to go somewhere that's just like still, no one's there. You feel like you're just present in the moment in a way where like you're just like everyone else in that
Yep.
place,
Yep.
You're just blending in, and makes it easier to enjoy life, I feel like.
Yeah. A couple more roller coaster rides. So you fall off tour, right? And what does that do to you mentally?
Thing that broke me mentally,
Mm.
I felt like it was over when it happened. I lost to John at Pipe, and the way it happened too was just like,
Yeah.
I got absolutely slaughtered in front of everyone I love, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So it's just like, it was super hard. I was crying after, it was super emotional dump, and I was super close. I even took requalify on the QS. If I had won Sunset, I would have requalified, but I got second. I felt like I was fighting so hard to keep it alive, and then I just dropped the ball. Like at the point where I was supposed to get to, like if I did one place better in the final at Sunset, or I made that heat at Pipe, I would have been back on.
Yeah.
So I felt like it just crumbled, and I was like, am I ever going to make it back here? Where all those thoughts just started coming into my head, and just like I worked so hard, and I felt like, yeah, at that point you just feel like it's over.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's like really hard to deal with. And then the contest's still going on, and you're not in it, and you're at home, and like your year's over, and like, you're packing up your stuff, and like you're looking like, what now, and I basically was like, well, I'm just gonna surf. I love surfing. And at this time of the year we have the best waves ever, so I'm just gonna surf my brains out. And then I ended up hurting my knee. MCL injury. So I was out for a little bit. So that made me just sit back and just think about where I was and like what I'm going to do. I mean, I knew I was just going to go right back into it and just go, I'm going to do the QS and try and get back on. But yeah, it's a hard thing to face. That the falling off thing was really hard, especially like, I mean, I did it a few times, but the first time was super rough,
Yeah. I can only imagine. Yeah. That had been like the dream, but you did make the dream, and you did go back and forth. So where are you at today in pro surfing? Okay, we started off that way. You said you're going to take a year off, but
yeah, I'm going to take a year off right now. And where I'm at right now is, I'm with my good friend, Kikoa Kazumura. He started a company called Ava.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually last year, at the beginning of the year, I was struggling to get support from Quicksilver at the time. This was before all the board riders, everything, all that stuff had come out.
Yeah.
Basically, like I was getting the effects of it before anyone knew about it. Because my contract had ended in 2022 in October, and they basically said they had nothing for me. Wow. But I'm like, I'm requalified. Like I'm gonna be on tour. Like I need the means to be able to go and do that. Like what am I gonna do? They're like, yeah, we're in this stage. Like the buyout's happening. Blah blah blah. Like we'll get back to you in like a few months, and we'll see where we're at. And it just kept extending. And I was like still surfing. I'd done the Eddie, and I did the 2 events on the world tour, and I was just in a real fragile mental state with that. And like my wife was still pregnant at the time, and our baby was coming, and like I felt like a lot was building up. It was super hard to compete. But I'd been free surfing right by my house one day, and Kikoa had paddled out. Our surf session turned into a conversation for 2 hours. And we just sat there, and I kind of just like, we were just talking. I just let him know where my life was at the point. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't even know if I can show up to events. Like I got enough to like show up to a first few, but after that, like I would have to start making money through events to keep going.
Yeah.
And he was like, wait, what? Quicksilver doesn't, they're not paying you? I was like, no. But they're super cool about it. But they, at the point, like I understand now, which I didn't back then, but now they're like, dude, everything's locked up. Like we can't really do anything until that thing goes through.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just lost with what to do. And he was like, you know what? I got you, dude.
Rad.
I'm gonna get you some support this year, and you're gonna be on tour, and freaking, we got you. And we linked up as easy as that, and as super organic as surfers. Like for it to happen like that is like, I feel like is what's special about surfing. You know, like things like that can happen in those moments, and that was super cool for me. So he supported me through the year, and you know, obviously I'd fallen off the halfway cut, and you know, it was just a different year for me. So a lot of different things are happening. I was trying to take it on, and Kiko is basically telling me like, dude, you don't have to compete. Like that's not,
Wow.
I'll support you in any way you want. So obviously if you want to, we got you, but if not, like, you know, we'll figure something else out. And basically Europe came around last year, and I was like, I don't want to go. And I talked to him about it, and he was like, bro, I got you no matter what.
That's rad.
Do other stuff. And he's like, I'd love your help with supporting the brand and doing other things within the brand. And I'm like, I got you. And so yeah, I've kind of been a little bit more involved than I have been with other brands, with this brand. Just like, and I'm learning the business a little more, and feel like the state of the industry is in this different place as well. So it's really, I'm in a real cool spot to be able to be alongside him and him teach me and learn a little bit more about the business, and not just be a surfer getting paid from a brand.
Yes.
And wearing board shorts and putting on a t-shirt and being like, okay, cool, I'm going to go to my next event. You know, that's kind of how things felt.
So now it feels more family.
So now it feels a little bit more organic, a little bit more family,
Yeah.
a little more like I have a connection with the brand.
Yeah.
And I want to see the brand succeed in a way that I didn't feel like before. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. But hey, at the end of the day, people still pay me to go surfing, so that's super cool.
That's everyone's dream, and only a handful get it.
And I actually picked up a new sponsor last year, which is XL Wetsuits.
That's rad too.
So I'm doing some stuff with XL, and I love those guys.
Yeah.
For me, they're like a super sick core like wetsuit brand from like back in the day.
Yeah.
With like Archie and all those guys. So I was like super stoked to link up with them, and I'm in a cool transitional phase of my life, and as far as, you know, personally and in surfing. So
what's your thought on the surf industry in general? You kind of already touched on it, but there are some brands that are core surfing, and I feel like surfers, especially if they know better, they're going to buy the core brands. They want to buy from a surfer.
So first, like, everything I feel like is like really hard. Like I read articles or I hear what things people are saying in conversations, and like I piece together what I feel like is happening. And I just feel like we're in like a transition phase where it probably is what happened when, you know, with the gotchas and like all those, the MCDs and all those brands before were transitioning, and then up came Quicksilver, Billabong, all those guys kind of filled those spots. I feel like the same thing's kind of happening. Yeah. Like Quicksilver, Billabong, Ruka, all those other brands. Now you got Vissla is probably one of like the stronger ones that are kind of filling those gaps. And then you got core surfers that came back and like are starting brands with like Former and Dane Reynolds. And then now you got John and his brands like Salty Crew. There's a bunch of others. I'm probably like not saying everyone, but like there's a lot of that coming back. And I feel like that's exactly what the industry needs right now. And I feel like maybe there was just a gap. There's a period where there's a lot of money getting thrown at surfers for competing and surfing and being that guy. So maybe that whole phase just changed the perspective of like what pro surfers do after competing or after like, you know, that transition. I feel like what keeps the machine running is like when guys have their time on tour or like they're at their high level of like surfing and like they represent these brands, afterwards coming back and like feeding it back in to the industry, whether you come back and work for a brand or come back and do things within your community to like pump up the industry and like get active within the community and the surf industry. I feel like all those things, if once it starts those guys feel the need to come back and start doing those things, that's where like the industry starts flourishing again.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the community. And like, if you're talking about core surf, the core surfers got to come back and create those things for the core surfers to like get involved with or
Yeah.
get invested in, you know? So
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of just where we're at right now. And it's tough, and people are like maybe not in as good of a spot as they were, but I also think could be for the better, and it could be, you know, a healthy thing for surfing.
Good point. What about WSL? What are your thoughts on WSL?
WSL is a whole different animal, and I think those are one of those things that when you start seeing like those core brands not sponsoring those events, that tells you already like the dynamic is changing. When the brands ran the events, that's what was like also keeping the machine running, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And like that tie in the brands with the comps, all that stuff really helped keep the industry going. I don't know. I'm just kind of like spitballing. That's what I feel.
No.
But like seeing it, it feels like there's a disconnect happening between WSL and like a lot of core surfing. Like now, like there's a void happening, and like guys are not, obviously there's a lot of people that feel like it should be done better, and there's a lot of controversy with it. So it's hard for me because I've done it and I've been in the WSL, and they've created a lot of opportunity for me, and I'm grateful for it. And that's where I made my career and stuff. But I also feel like, that's changing too. And it's definitely difficult. I feel like, right now I don't really watch that much events. I'm not like heavily invested in like what's going on. I'll watch a couple of my friends' events and see how they're doing, kids from Hawaii and stuff. But as far as like a freaking avid like watcher of the WSL, like that's probably not me. I'll hear something and then go watch, basically.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. What about your YouTube channel? It's pretty rad.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah. YouTube was something I started in COVID, and I was home, and I just got done. I know it came out kind of towards the end of COVID, but the TV show Ultimate Surfer, I'd done that during COVID, and I was spending a lot of time with like Cole Smith and Mason Barnes, and they're into like the YouTube game and all that. And they kind of were like, you got to start doing it. It's sick and super fun. Think people would be stoked on it. And they kind of like put me onto it. So during COVID, I was like, I'm not traveling, not doing contests. I'm training. I'm surfing a lot. I might as well film it and put it on YouTube. So we started it back then, and then I requalified, and then I was like, oh, it's like just a lot for me to balance.
So
like,
much
competing at that level and training, and then also doing the vlog thing. We're coming out a video every week, so I pushed pause on it, but I would put out videos when I could. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I just muscled through and like kept it going, because I feel like YouTube grows over time. And then all those things like I would have done and been doing at those times probably would have been super relevant for my YouTube, but it would have just been a lot to do at that time, so I just didn't. Now I'm starting to do it now again, because again I'm home, I have more time, and I'm on this journey to like fall in love with surfing again. I feel like competing, you really get disconnected with like your love of it, just because like I'm surfing for scores, and essentially I'm surfing for someone else's approval, which is like probably not the healthiest thing for someone to do over a long period of time. And especially if it's something that you really love doing, which surfing is generally just that. A lot of times, like I'll go surf, and I love surfing when there's no one around, no one filming, and it's just me. And if I'm alone in the water, I feel like it's like a real recharging thing for me, and I just love feeling that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm basically there, and I'm on my quest of doing that and just rebuilding that, and been enjoying it a lot more now. But it definitely changes how I surf and what I like to do surfing. So.
But you did bring up the Ultimate Surfer, which I thought was good personally. I liked it. What did you think of it? And I like the way you came across. You were kind of the serious guy. You were there for one reason only, and I love that.
Definitely, like when I was doing it, I was like, I am not a reality show TV star. That's not what I want to be.
Yeah. It was fucking rad.
But I was like, hey, it's an opportunity. I'm not doing anything. They said I'll have 3 events on tour, and that caught my eye. I was like, well, that'll back up my, like, basically I'm doing this to like give myself a little cushion to be like, I'll have something going back on the QS to like ease a little bit of pressure off. Like, hey, I'll still be there in some way. So like I can just put all my concentration on making heats on the QS. So I did that. I was a little nervous. So I definitely, before I went there, I like trained really hard. I got myself in a really strong mental space to be like, hey, this is my character. I'm not breaking it. This is basically who I'm going to be on the show. And I have to really be strong on that. So I really get my message across of who I am and who I want to be and like what I represent. So that's basically what I was thinking going into it, which in the beginning, it kept a hard shell around me. But as I was doing it and got more comfortable throughout the show, I actually really enjoyed the process. It was something really cool for me. I love surfing Slater's wave pool every single day I woke up. That was super fun. You know what I mean? Like at that time, it was sick. And I had done the event on tour a couple years before that. I struggled there. It was a really hard event for me to perform at under pressure and stuff. It was crazy. And then being able to do that, I like figured the whole wave. I was like, oh my God, this is sick. I'm like actually doing it and surfing the way I want to surf on this wave. Honestly, I loved it. I like felt like I was sharp. I kept mentally strong. I was in really good physical shape. And like, I basically was proud that I went there to do a task and I accomplished that. And that was it.
Was there off time? Or what did you guys do? There's nothing to do around there.
Dude, there was nothing. And let me tell you, a cold day, it was like 105 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
That was a cold day. It was crazy.
Hot.
Basically, we'd shoot for 3 days straight. We shoot one episode. It was 3 days. And then we'd have an off day. And we just like lay around. They had like food for us. We'd play around. We couldn't surf the pool on an off day, though.
Okay.
With no surfing. And they'd like let us watch some shows and like whatever. But a lot of it was like chilling with like Koa and like Kai Barger and like those guys that are on the show. Alejandro.
Yeah.
And Luke Davis. We'd just be chilling, talking story. You had no phone. You had no computer. You had no like music. Everything was like,
oh, so you're regulated.
Really, like, it was a cleansing experience, honestly, because like
that's cool.
Normal life, like you're always on a device. You're always like on the phone or I'm listening to music. I always have some stimulation. Me doing that and only focus on where I was and like the people I was around and being in like really embracing what I was doing. I felt like it was a really healthy thing for me at the time and honestly made me perform way better probably.
Cool.
So it was super cool. I like that part of it.
They didn't do it like a day trip to Santa Cruz to go surf for a day or anything?
No, we didn't.
No.
I think COVID really like
locked it down.
Hindered a lot of what we could do. Like they didn't even like it was crazy. Like I think it was like 3 weeks. You're seeing the same people every single day, the same things. Like it was gnarly. It was not easy.
Okay.
For sure. But it was a cool experience.
Was there any quarrels or anything going on? Or were you guys all just friends?
Nah.
It was all
I
good.
think that's why everyone felt like the show maybe didn't do as well, just because there wasn't any like drama there, you know?
Okay.
Everyone was like real friendly and like stoked. We all kind of knew each other from the past and like
competing against each other here and there.
There was no real like you said, like no adversity between each other.
Do you think they should have kept the show going? Did another season or two?
I thought they definitely should have.
I think so too.
Like I think it would have only got better.
Yes.
Mean, do it 1 year only. You don't really know what you're getting, but
yeah, it's such a bummer. I think you guys did a great job. Personally, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I think it turned out great. I love the way it turned out. It was just like, I think it was hard just seeing the response it got from the surf industry and like the public. It maybe didn't get the response they were hoping for. I knew that was going to be the response. Like I definitely knew that's kind of what we were up against. Yeah. And then it was for like the other people that weren't core surf were going to love it, which I feel like they did.
Yeah. I think the surf, anyhow, all right, we both talked about it, but yeah, I think it was a great show. And I'm kind of pissed off they only gave it 1 year. It's bullshit.
Yeah. I feel like
in my opinion,
yeah, it would have grew into something really good. I feel like
a couple more things I got to talk to you about.
Yeah.
I love the way you compete. But you got a lot of flack from people. People didn't necessarily always like the way you competed.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just you, right?
I got a lot of heat. But yeah, that's how I am.
I love it.
That's how I grew up. And
but back in the day, there was the Sonny Garcia. There were a certain amount of guys. Jake the Snake probably was similar.
Same. Like I attracted, like all those guys were in my corner. You know what I mean? Those were all my coaches, my mentors. Like if it would have been a surprise if I didn't turn out like that. You know what I mean?
But we need somebody like that. It gets too homogenized in pro surfing, in my opinion. But just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I mean,
I love the way you compete.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's just the way I grew up too. Like I think naturally those guys gravitated towards me because they seen that was my demeanor, my attitude. That's how I approached it. I came hard and would do pretty much anything I thought necessary to accomplish the goal or win. But I grew up in an intense competitive environment with just my family and my dad and like my cousins and stuff growing up. Even my friends in high school, like we competed on a level that was just like intense, and we did it all the time, and that was just my lifestyle. My dad growing up, like competing with surfing and any sport we did was like super intense, like to a point where I don't think people really understand, but like it was a lot. All those things carried over into like how I competed in a way, like instantly like competing because of how I did it from when I was so young and the intensity that it was back then. Like once it transferred over, that just became my natural way of like, I would switch that mode on to like get it done. And a lot of times it was like, dude, it's going to be a long car ride home, my dad, if I don't get this done. So I need to figure it out. You know what I mean? And that became like a lot of my driving force. And then which turned into like how I naturally just approached it.
Did you ever have to turn it down for pro surfing? For your sponsors, for WSL, for any of those guys? They ever have you talk to you? Turn it down?
I feel like I always had to try and keep it keep it at a certain level. But then there was always moments where I would just like, it just would come out.
Good.
Know? It's just like,
we need more.
That's just how it would. Yeah. But I always tried. Like I tried to like do it in this way that was like acceptable, but it was just too hard. If I seen a way that I could win and it was within the rules,
right?
But
you weren't breaking the rules.
It wasn't as like it's a gentleman's sport, and I was gonna break that little code. I was like, dude, I'll figure that out later. I'm gonna get this done right now.
I love it. All right, cool. Well, Zeke, dude, it was super fun, super insightful, and I think there's more to talk about. Maybe one day in the future you can come back on the QuiverCast. I'm super stoked. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to do this again. Thanks for having me.
Right on. All right, everybody. This is Mike and Zeke Lau, and we are out of here.
You go left, I go right. Man, this wave is out of sight. Going surfing. Going surfing. Going surfing with friends. Ride this wave to the shore. Paddle out, I'm gonna catch 10 more. Going surfing. Going surfing. Going surfing with friends. I don't care if it's wrong or right. I'm gonna do it all day, I'm gonna do it all night. I'm going surfing. Going surfing. Going surfing with friends. On my way, it's a beautiful day. I'm going surfing. I'm going surfing. Going surfing with friends. Woo!
Hey, you guys, Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic, numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip. From the original print, you will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production. All hand assembled. This thing's rad. So much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film. But dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.